Hello, everybody. Welcome into this PTN Digital Extra Scouting the Red Raiders with David Collier. I'm Evan Kamiko. Thank you so much to David Collier, the sports director at Red Raider Nation, for joining us. David, it's a gorgeous Wednesday here in Fayetteville. How are you doing down there in Lubbock?
We're doing great, Evan. We appreciate your time. A little toasty. We haven't had great weather here lately, but 80 plus degrees at least today. If you know anything about Lubbock, though, it'll probably be in the 60s tomorrow.
That's fair. It's kind of the same up here where you never know what the weather is going to be. So we're just hoping it's good weather. Right now, we're in the 70s up here, but we're not here to talk about weather. We're here to talk about basketball and specifically the Sweet 16 matchup in San Francisco. That game is tomorrow between Arkansas, the 10 seed, and Texas Tech, the 3 seed. It's been a pretty dominant year so far for the Red Raiders. They finished, I believe, the 3rd seed in the Big 12 overall standings, whereas the Big 12 tournament lost in the semifinals to Arizona. If you can kind of take Hog fans through what's this season been like for Greg McCasland and his team, Grant McCasland, I should say, and his team.
Well, it was Evan. Basically, it's a brand new basketball team, right? They had to replace 7 people from a year ago, whether graduation or transfer portal, and they brought in 7 new faces, and 5 of those guys of what is currently a 7-man rotation are integral parts of this Sweet 16 basketball team. You had to replace a lot of offense from a year ago, but you get JT Toppin, the Big 12 Player of the Year, just the second Red Raider to ever do that. The last one to do that was Jared Culver. He helped lead the Red Raiders to a national runner-up finish back in 2019. He'll be a guy that we'll probably talk about a lot over the next few minutes. Elijah Hawkins, one of the assist leaders in the NCAA a year ago from Minnesota, comes in, and all he does in his first year at Texas Tech is set the single season record for assists. You go from there. Darian Williams, a regular from last season. Chance McMillan, who we may or may not see on Thursday night against the Razorbacks. And Christian Anderson's a freshman that didn't look great in the first 2 rounds, a little bit under the weather, but he's a guy that you're going to be want to be worried about if you're an Arkansas Razorback fan.
Yeah, so UNC Wilmington it was the first round opponent in the NCAA tournament. We'll kind of close in. I'm trying to make sure I've got all of my facts straight. So UNC Wilmington in the first round, then they beat Drake in the second round. The Wilmington game, they were the 14 seed. Drake was the 11 seed. Now they play this Arkansas team. So 3 10 seeds in the NCAA tournament. We will get there momentarily, but let's go back to the Big 12 tournament and the loss against Arizona. That was really one of the first times all season where, Texas Tech has 8 losses. So they definitely are not one of a team like St. John's who's coming in very dominant all year. Even though 8 losses, you look at that and you go, yeah, that's a pretty good record for 1 year. But for Texas Tech, what stood out to you in that Big 12 tournament run to the semifinals that really saw you see this team get in game shape, especially without Chance McMillan, who's been out for some time now?
Yeah, and the Red Raiders, to be honest with you, were in a situation where they really couldn't help their seed that much in the Big 12 basketball tournament. Make sure you win that first round game against Baylor and then move on. Do you want to win the Big 12 tournament? Sure. But like I said, with as limited as this roster is and the health issues they've dealt with, whether it was JT Toppin, Darian Williams, Chance McMillan, it was better for them to rest up. Obviously, Arizona, a really good basketball team as well, a team that could potentially cause a problem for Duke if they get to that when we get to that point. But the Red Raiders, I think, had done all of the work they had needed to before losing to Arizona in the Big 12 tournament. They beat them during the regular season. Look, Houston hasn't lost since they lost to Texas Tech in Houston,
Mm-hmm.
by the way, with no JT Toppin or Grant McCasland, both ejected early in that game. Again, no Big 12 player of the year, and you still beat a 1 seed in their place. And that's the last time that team's lost a basketball game. Yeah, that should tell you how good and how prepared Grant McCasland has his basketball team, even without him on the sidelines.
Yeah, he's somebody who's very meticulous, comes from a really great basketball background. And you've kind of mentioned that loss against Houston a couple of weeks ago. I'm curious for you, where have you really seen this team grow since then and get better as JT Toppin has continued to come on? You've got Elijah Hawkins. There's a lot of weapons on this Texas Tech team. There's a reason they are a 3 seed. So where, in your opinion, have you seen Texas Tech grow the most to get ready now for the Sweet 16?
I think it's one of those cliches for the postseason, right? The guard play. Elijah Hawkins against Drake had 7 assists and no turnovers, and he was guarding. I can't remember his name now, but you know the point guard that has since joined Ben McCullum there at Iowa. he
Mhm.
he was in charge of playing defense and follow him around the entire game. So not only was he being winded by just playing defense, but he didn't even turn the ball over one time in that game. He's been great for this team distributing the basketball. But I think the key for this basketball team is the many different ways. They have so many scoring options. Look, you mentioned the first round game against UMC Wilmington. Kerwin Walton hit 8 threes in that basketball game. Kerwin Walton can do that, but that's not something he's done on a regular basis this year. Yes, he's going to hit 2, 3 threes against most teams that he plays against. But in that instance, when they decided to shoot an NCAA tournament record 46 3-point attempts, he was able to come through in that contest. That's not what you're going to see all the time with Texas Tech, as you saw in the Drake game, where they just fed it inside to JT Toppin and Darian Williams. But that's the thing. There's balance on this basketball team. I mentioned Kerwin Walton. He's not even the best 3-point shooting threat on this team. That's Chance McMillan, who may or may not play in the Sweet 16 matchup because of what they call an upper body injury. It's more of believed to be an oblique.
Yeah, so interesting injury update there. As you've already mentioned, Chance McMillan, another one of those guys who's a stretch wing who can really shoot the ball really well. But I think what impressed me the most was watching the highlights of the Drake game this morning is just the ability that they wanted to get downhill. Texas Tech is a team that wants to get in the paint and then kick out. Like you mentioned, something I was going to bring up about the most threes attempted against UNC Wilmington. But really, the team plays through JT Toppin. That's the guy, that's who they're trying to get the ball down to. When you now look at this Arkansas matchup, against the Red Raiders, what really do you think is the key for on the Texas Tech side for JT to get going really early and to establish himself low in the paint?
Well, that's the thing too. They try to get him the ball early, right? And that's it. They're not going to force it though. That's the thing. If Arkansas takes JT away, they're going to shoot the basketball on the outside. They'll try to get it into him, but he's a pretty good passer as well, and he gets his shot up really fast. You don't have much time to collapse and double team on JT Top, and he's got the little left-handed hook, and he gets the ball up really quick. Very unique, something that you really don't see in college basketball these days. But they're not going to force it. I mean, now that could be the live by the three, die by the three situation. But Christian Anderson, I mentioned him as a freshman. He struggled in the first 2 rounds, believed to be ill. I don't see him struggling that way. He has been a phenomenal freshman, one of the best in the country that a lot of people haven't heard about. He was originally committed to Michigan, but once Juwan Howard was let go, he decommitted from them, and that was great news for the Red Raiders. He's a guy that played for the German national team during the summer and was scoring 20 plus points a game. So he's certainly capable of knocking down threes. Again, they're not going to force it to him. A lot of times when they need a bucket in the paint like that, if they can't get it into JT, they're going to give it to Darian Williams, and he's going to back you down. And if you decide to double team, he's going to find one of those shooters.
Yeah, and Williams had 28 points in that second round matchup against Drake. Another one of those scoring options for the Red Raiders. They just seem to be everywhere. Again, with that in mind, Chance McMillan not even on the court. So it's a really deep team, but I'm curious, how do you think these two teams stack up? Where do you think Texas Tech's strength is going to be when it comes to facing off against the Razorbacks? Because the guard play of this Arkansas team has been really good between Nelly Davis and DJ Wagner, not to mention, too, Boogie Flan looked really, really good against St. John's. So what are some of those advantages on the guard play side that Texas Tech is going to have to bring with them to beat Arkansas?
Well, I will say this. I don't know defensively how good Arkansas is, but if they can get their hands in passing lanes and maybe disrupt Elijah Hawkins, if there is one downside to Elijah Hawkins, obviously, is it's his size. I mean, he's not the biggest guard in the world, but he's able to work around that. Like I mentioned before, he certainly doesn't turn the ball over that much. But if he's not able to distribute and they can wreak havoc on the perimeter, you got to get in passing lanes. Like I said, there's so many different options to shoot the three ball. As far as rebounding the basketball, it doesn't look like Arkansas is the greatest rebounding basketball team. JT Toppin and Darian Williams are going to rebound the basketball. Federico is another big that comes off the bench, but surprisingly, he's not going to be a guy that's going to clean up on the boards. He's more of a guy that gives JT Toppin a little rest more than anything. But I think if the Red Raiders can rebound against the Razorbacks, I think it will probably go true to form, and the higher seed will come away with a win in this one.
Yeah, it's the offensive glass game that's really intriguing because that's where the Hogs have struggled. They struggled earlier in their 2 games against St. John's and Kansas, where they weren't fighting very well on the offensive boards. But you look at kind of that Texas Tech team, and it's the opposite. They were demolishing the boards, it seemed like, in both of their wins, and even really against Arizona, going back to the loss in the Big 12 tournament, where they were playing really good ball, and again ran into an Arizona team that just shot the lights out. Especially Caleb Love having a quiet 28 points or so in that game. So curious too, when now you look at the Arkansas side, you're bringing Jonas, you have Jonas Adu playing at this high level that he is, and not to mention as well, Adu Thero going to be playing for 12 to 15 minutes for those Texas Tech bigs, especially JT Toppin. How do you get him going early?
Well, I think they're going. That's the uniqueness of this. Jeff Linder's an assistant coach with the Red Raiders. This is his first year here. He came from Wyoming. Him and Grant McCaslin kind of work hand in hand on the offensive end, and I think that's why I lean towards Texas Tech in this basketball game because of the duality of this. I'm not joking when I say if they can't get it into JT Toppin and they're not going to force it, they will find different ways to score. And if it comes down to Darian Williams backing a guy down again, somebody's going to have to help. And if they have to collapse, he misses the shot. JT Toppin, you mentioned it a moment ago, he'll be there on the offensive glass, and he doesn't necessarily need to grab it. He can just tip it back in. There are multiple ways for JT Toppin to affect this basketball team. Obviously, scoring the most important in most cases, but he can do a lot. He can, again, pass. He can be a facilitator as well as a big. I think, just to go back to the first game against UNC Wilmington, it was a quiet game for him, and they still were very effective, albeit not in the paint, but they didn't have to be. I mean, they were able to shoot the basketball, and I think they'll be able to do that. To what extent? To shooting it 46 times, I don't think that will be the game plan.
Yeah.
But you also got to keep in mind he's got to play defense at the other end. And if he gets in foul trouble, then you have the issue, as I mentioned, of Federico coming in there. This is the one thing. It's a very deep 7 deep. I know
Mhm.
that's not deep, but it would be 8 if Chance McMillan was healthy. But if we hear a lot of whistles early on, that could be a problem for the Red Raiders.
And it kind of mirrors the problems for Arkansas the last couple of weeks, where they've had foul trouble because it's not a 7-man, but deeper than 7-man. It is a legit 7-man rotation. You get to do Thero back and Boogie Flynn. That'll put him at 9. But with those two guys being on really a minutes cap, you're still at 7 and hoping for a little more. But I love that you keep bringing up physicality because I think that's the big key in this game and it isn't any postseason basketball that we talk about, but you especially look where the Hogs have been lacking physicality from Brazil and Brazil and Big Z, where those are guys who seem to get backed down a lot by their opponents. Z really has struggled the last couple of games, and TB is more of that side wing who maybe you'll see him more on a Darian Williams rather than a top bin or some of the other bigs, Federico off the bench. So I'm curious for you. We've talked about kind of the size and the factor. When it comes to shooting the ball, especially, how important do you think it is for, at least when you look at Texas Tech's defense, for them to get back quick? Because that's Arkansas's game. They're going to want to run and gun. Do you think that's important? And how big has Grant McCaslin been really reinforcing that we've got to get back, we've got to play strong defense against the Razorbacks?
Yeah, well, and I mean, it all depends on what you're doing on the offensive end, right? If you're scoring buckets, you're going to be able to get back and get set in a defense. I don't think that they're necessarily wanting to get in a gun game, but I believe they're averaging more points than Arkansas on the season. I think it's around 80 for the Red Raiders. They're not afraid of getting into that basketball game. Um, Obviously, you want to slow it down a little bit more with the lack of depth from the bench with Chance McMillan. Again, a key thing with Chance McMillan, not only shooting the basketball, which would be limited if he does play. I mean, I don't know how what percentage he's going to be at. You know, you mentioned the minutes, the 12 to 15 minute thing on your side, but I think it's the minutes that he played. He was like averaging 30 plus minutes a game. I mean, he provided so much more than just scoring. So uh, I think you want to slow it down a little bit, but they're more than capable of running up and down the court.
So, David, as we wrap up, curious for you, I love asking this question. If the Red Raiders want to come away with this game, X has to happen. What's that X?
I know it's a silly mantra, but you kind of mentioned it there, and this is the kind of the Grant McCaslin, their theme for the year: the toughest team wins. I think if they're able to mention, like you said, if they're able to battle down low, JT is able to enforce as well. Darian's able to back a guy down, and if not, take a shot, make the next pass and the next pass, because they're really good at passing up open shots for a better shot, right? The patience that they've had this year to find the right guy in the right position, but it comes down to being able to be tougher mentally, whether it's mentally tougher, physically tougher. I think that part is something that has been very special with this basketball team. Again, I don't want to get too deep into the weeds, but there have been multiple times this year where if another team was missing player X, they weren't going to win this basketball game, whether it was an ejection, a guy that was sick, a guy. JT Toppin lost like 10, 15 pounds in the middle of the season. It took him a while to work his way back. They didn't have two guards at the beginning of the year, and Darian Williams is playing point guard. They all know how to basically play everything, and they're tough mentally because of what they've gone through this year. And I think when it gets down to grinding at the end of a basketball game, I think they'll be prepared for whatever's thrown at them by Arkansas.
And that's the big thing I think in this entire game is that's where Arkansas struggles. That last 10 minutes to close out the game, we've seen it over and over again. They've had a 10+ point lead. You can look at the game against St. John's, Kansas, Mississippi State, Ole Miss. Arkansas hasn't been able to close on some of these games, maybe as they should, by 8 to 12 points. Rather, it's been a 2-3 point win where you're biting your nails, and don't let that St. John's score fools you, because Arkansas was up at one point 68 to 66, 66, 64, whatever it was, and then got, St. John's started fouling, then you go away with winning. So I think that's the big thing is whichever team can close late in this game is going to be really important for it. David, anything we missed when it comes to scouting the Red Raiders?
I'll mention it again. He didn't have a great first weekend. I think Christian Anderson is a guy that could potentially have a good basketball game. He has the ability to get to the basket, and he has zero fear when it comes to shooting the basketball. He'll 5 feet behind the 3-point line. If it's an open shot and he's confident about it, he can score some points. So if you're looking for Kerwin Walton to score 20, I think you got a much better chance at Christian Anderson being a problem on Thursday.
I like it. I love that take. Someone else that didn't perform, and that's the thing with sports, right? Whoever isn't doing it, someone's going to pick them back up, and eventually they'll end up getting theirs. David, anything else before we go?
I think that's about it. I hope you guys enjoy the game, just not as much as obviously the Red Raider fans want to.
Yeah, hopefully it's a good game. I think that's all what anyone asks for, and hopefully you and I aren't working super late when it comes to Thursday night. It's a 9:09 p.m. Central Time tip between the Hogs and the Red Raiders. It should be a very fun one, but that is going to do it for this PTN Digital Extra scouting the Red Raiders. Big thanks to David Collier, sports director of Red Raider Nation, for hopping on. I'm Evan Kamiko. We'll see you very soon.